Hello, and welcome to the Health Data Ethics Podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Owens, and in today's episode, we're going to talk about an IBM study that I just read in which they interviewed 2,500 C-suite leaders, 34 countries, 26 industries, all looking at blind spots around generative AI that tech leaders have to grapple with if they want to be successful. There's a lot of content here, so let's get started. The report is really primarily concerned with how do you effectively drive growth in the generative AI era. Sorry, IT. You can call it whatever you want, whether it's tech or information systems or data or digital. It's still really siloed. And so the central thesis of the report is that tech leaders have to lead strategy in concert with business leaders, that we can't be separate. We can't be viewed as an ancillary service. We have to be a leader and have a seat at the table. It's interesting because they do note that leadership among organizations says that IT delivery of basic services is perceived to be eroding. At the same time that there is an increased demand for higher technological capabilities and increased strategy around technology. Lots of opportunities for automation to increase efficiency, but we do have to grapple with the fact that that perception of the erosion of basic services is going to decrease trust in our organizations. So the study is really primarily concerned with high-performing tech leaders, and they list 6 blind spots that these leaders have to grapple with. So let's first define what is a high-performing tech leader. They're a leader who's going to be able to effectively develop strategy and execute it in line with an enterprise strategy. So having a separate tech strategy that is aligned with your enterprise strategy that you can not only conceive but also execute. They're going to have a focus on cross-functional management. So they're going to make sure that any large directions that they're taking, they're involving business leaders and finance in those decisions. A high-performing tech leader is committed to measuring outcomes and value. It's the sound of my heart. And then a high-performing tech leader is going to be involved in keeping an eye on technology at all levels, all locations, all business lines, all function levels. So in our health system example, a tech leader is going to be focused on everybody's end user technology experience, not just the folks in the IT division, not folks just in analytics, not just our senior leadership, but everybody at every location in every job role. If I'm a floor nurse, how am I interacting with technology? If I am an ambulatory physician, how am I interacting with technology? If I'm environmental services, if I'm food services, if I'm a patient representative who's checking people in at the desk, what is my end user technology experience like? So in this week's episode, we're going to cover our first 3 blind spots. In next week's episode, we're going to take on the back half, and then we'll tie it all together. So for this episode, I wanted to talk first about blind spot number 1, which is that we treat tech as an enabler rather than the core of everything we do. And when I first read this, I thought, well, but that's not really true in healthcare, right? Because everything we do, the core of everything we do is to care for the patient and to increase the overall amount of health in the general population. That is our call as people who work in healthcare, is to care for our patients. And then I thought, well, now wait a minute. I'm sure that every other industry is probably going to say that as well. If I say, let's put myself in like the shoes of an automotive manufacturer, right? If I'm a Ford or if I'm an Audi or if something like that, I would say that my tech is not the core of what I do there either. What I do is I produce a quality automobile that people can rely on to get them from point A to point B with varying degrees of coolness or efficiency, and safety. And I thought, okay, well, let's really think about this. And then I thought about the rich history of technology when it comes to medical care. I thought about all the technical innovation that I've had a chance to see with my own eyes in the laboratory, all of the technology that is now put to use to understand the human body, all of the imaging, all of the blood testing, all of the tissue-based testing, all of that technology that we bring to bear on how to care for the patient and understand their disease better. Better understanding of patients' diseases is actually one of the foundational pillars of Cleveland Clinic. So I started to think, okay, well, maybe tech truly is at the core of everything that we do, but it's tech with a very specific purpose. It's tech with the purpose of allowing us to better care for the patient, to better understand their diseases, and using technology as that sort of central pillar of our empathy and our care for patients. Which is an interesting way to think about it. When you start thinking about care for patients as primarily a technical problem, it does change things a little bit. So Treating tech as an enabler rather than the core of what we do leads to very sporadic innovation. So innovation in technology requires collaboration, and it requires people who aren't technical to have knowledge of technical capabilities. So, for example, at Jenny's totally fictional health system, we really do have an innovative spirit at my fake hospital system. We have 1,000 different ways that a motivated caregiver can innovate. If you're a frontline hands-on patient caregiver, if you're an IT person, if you're, like any of the 1,000 administrative jobs, we have a bunch of different ways that you can do innovation. We have quality improvement, fairs, and we have projects that are continually rolling for quality improvement and continuous improvement. We have internal grants that we give to allow folks to innovate if they need some funds to do that. We sponsor hackathons. We sponsor conferences. We want people to tell us about their new ideas. We have accelerators with some local businesses that enable us to get some industry input in there. At Jenny's totally fictional health system, we really are dedicated to this idea of innovation. But what we have is 1,000 single filaments of ways that you can innovate. And what we need is fiber optic. We need something to kind of wrap around all of that and pull it all together and truly channel all of that innovative spirit in a way that makes sense for our organization. And this gets back to my eternal question about what is the function of healthcare IT? Is it purely just to support the health system, keep the lights on, keep your EHR up to date, make sure that your data is safe and secure? Is it to innovate with clinical folks? Is it to put our technical skills to use at the behest of our clinicians and our friends? Or is it to innovate ourselves in healthcare IT? And I think the answer that I am coming to after a year plus of doing this podcast is that it's a little bit of all three, right? We're never going to release our mandate in healthcare IT to not keep our data safe and secure, to let our EHR decay and get out of date. We're never going to lose our mandate to partner with our clinicians and with other folks to make care for our patients more efficient and safer and more effective. We're also never going to stop wanting to improve ourselves. So it's all three. So if we want to treat tech as the core of what we want to do, the first thing that we have to do is we have to all agree that there are critical business problems that you should be using technology in order to solve. In order to solve those problems, we need to establish a framework for evaluating solutions to those problems. And their solutions may involve artificial intelligence and they may not. Not everything has to involve AI. Sometimes a simple solution is a better one. We also need a unified product innovation framework with security and governance built in from the start. So when I was saying previously, like my fictional health system has a bunch of one-off project-y type of things. We could get one pilot here or do one project that is bounded in time there. What we need is a central framework. So if we can say that something works really well, for example, in the Respiratory Institute in an outpatient setting over here, how might we translate that to other outpatient settings? How might we translate that to inpatient respiratory? How might we expand that and roll it out? How do we do pilots and do nice, tidy, snack size, innovative projects with the idea always of, well, okay, what's the next step if it's successful? And then last, finding the creatives at heart in your workforce. So the people who are passionate about improving things, the people who have ideas, how do you find them and encourage them to come to the front and make sure that they are receiving the support that they need? This is a really interesting project actually for HR, right? So that's blind spot number one, tech as enabler rather than the core of everything that we do. Blind spot number two, we're going to go back to Jenny's fictional health system here. We say that we collaborate. We sometimes give good faith efforts towards collaboration, but our collaboration is only skin deep. We may have the best of intentions, but we often have gaps in planning and decision making. And I have to say that at Jenny's totally fictional health system, despite our best intentions, this is definitely true. We find that data and dollars can tell the story, but sometimes the technical speak and the layers of security that are needed to deal with such sensitive information can kind of get in the way. So in the study that was published by IBM, they suggest ways to deal with this, including aggressive diplomacy in the C-suite, which is a really funny mental image for me. They urge tech leaders, and when I say tech leaders, this is really pitched at chief technology officers, chief information officers, chief data officers. They urge these folks to lead the challenging conversations. So to say, hey, we brought in a project that we said was going to save the fictional health system $3 million. Did it? Hey, finance, can we get an analyst on this and actually run the numbers and see what was the impact for what we did? And then the other thing that they recommend, which is something that's also very near and dear to my heart, show your work to build credibility. If you do a pilot, talk about the data. Talk about what went into your decision to select a particular technology. Talk about what surprised you. Talk about what didn't surprise you. One of the most powerful leader speeches I think I've ever seen was a local chief medical information officer at one of our local hospitals who went to a local conference and said, "We tried AI on this particular use case and it failed. Let me tell you why. Let me tell you what we learned, and let me tell you what we changed the next time around." It was incredibly impactful, a really powerful speech out of a leader I already admired, and it made my respect for them just go straight through the roof. All right, blind spot number 3, and that will close our podcast for today, is we need to admit that generative AI may stress our existing infrastructure to the breaking point. So a lot of organizations, and I will say that healthcare is not exempt from this, do not currently have cloud and data capabilities that are sufficient to roll out generative AI on a broad enterprise level. So if we were to, for example, in my fictional hospital, roll out Gen AI to answer all the phones and to draft all the patient messages and to write all of our after visit summaries, my fictional data center that goes with my fictional hospital is not up to this task. It's also interesting to think about this because it forces an organization to really reckon with the amount of technology debt that they have racked up. So what have we been putting off? What have we been punting down the road when budgets get tight, or when it's difficult to justify, oh, we need to update our data center. We need to look at moving more things into the cloud. We need to think about something that's a little bit more nimble for our data. This reminds me of my favorite quote from my moral injury versus burnout paper that says that technology in healthcare can soak up capital that could have been spent on other things and give clinicians another mandate and another goal to serve, basically, when their primary goal should be serving the patient. So I bring this up with kind of questions, right? Because there are often valid reasons why one might choose to accept some tech debt, but then you pay the price when it comes time for innovation and you're not ready. And so first we need to modernize our data center to the tune of many, many dollars. And then we are able to move forward with our AI, by which point the field has moved on and other people are scooping us, and the newer, better technology is there, and it requires yet another modernization. And this is the fear, right? That you get behind and that things snowball and you're never actually able to catch up. So it does make managing your tech debt a business imperative. I wouldn't say paying off your tech debt is a business imperative, but managing it actively and with an eye towards the future and with a strategic component is absolutely important. You also have to prioritize your transformation of your infrastructure based on the business needs. If it's really crucial to get your call centers up and running and to have those be as modern and efficient as possible, then focus on the infrastructure that serves your call centers. If it's more important to you that your EHR information archive be nimble and ready to be mined by a person using a natural language query, just, hey, I wonder how many visits we had for strep throat last year. If it's very important that somebody be able to ask that question and get it answered quickly, then focus on that. Lastly, it's really important to pick partners who share your values and your goals, and those goals should, of course, include security and compliance. I want to end on this note because I thought this was funny. The article suggests using generative AI to write code to modernize your applications, and then follows it up with bullet point number 4, which we'll touch on in our next episode.